The hospitality industry touches a lot of stakeholders, investors, operators, employees, consultants, architects, etc. And these stakeholders tend to be very busy throughout the year. It's very critical that all of these stakeholders unite once a year at least to discuss the trends in the industry and what's going on. I think this is one of the key reasons why such gatherings are important, getting people together.
But then there's more than just getting people together, because at the end of the day, there are issues to be addressed. And how do you think then this kind of a forum can practically address those issues? What do you think needs to be done?
I think people have to come to with an open mind to listen, debate, learn, and share opinions. And most importantly, people, when they go back home, they have to take what they've discussed here with them and do something about it. Right. A lot of times you attend these forums, and the moment you leave, you forget about it. And this is what you shouldn't do.
And not something that we need to do. Let's talk a bit now about the Radisson Blue. And the group has actually, some operating plans. And I want us to just take some time and talk about your 5-year operating plan. Which areas of focus are you going to be looking at, and what would be your expected results from there?
Let's touch global and go and macro to micro a little bit, if you may. So if you look at the world today, our focus probably in the Asia Pacific is to unlock China. In the Americas is to accelerate Radisson Blue in that part of the world, specifically in the US. And in EMEA, to really accelerate our organic growth in emerging markets and cement our position in mature markets, this is mainly Europe, as a leading operator in the upper upscale segment. As you know, Radisson Blue is the largest upper upscale brand in Europe, and we need to cement and leverage on that.
Mm-hmm. And so maybe if we talk about now Africa, we've talked about Upper Europe, but then there is the Africa aspect. What sort of plans then do you have for Africa?
Africa links to the, when I mentioned the emerging markets, the acceleration of our business in emerging markets, Africa is a key critical component of that. The continent is a key continent for us for growth. We were probably one of the late movers to the continent, but we were the first to comment on the continent by creating a joint venture first in South Africa, by leasing some of our first hotels, but also by providing investors with some financial support to develop their hotels, up to 50 million that we provided over the last 10 years. So really, it's a focus market for us. The West Africa is where we've been growing the most over the last 12 months. As you've heard, we have announced today 10 deals in Africa, 10 new hotels. 70% of those hotels are in West Africa, most of them between Nigeria and Abidjan, and the remainder across the country. We are very present, as you know, in the eastern side of Africa, in most countries. The only country where we don't have a significant presence is Tanzania, and this is where we're looking to grow for the next 1 or 2 years.
Right. Would you mind just breaking down for us these 10 deals, why, the process, and the long-term plan for them?
Sure. The 10, as I said, 70%, 7 of them are in West Africa, 3 in Nigeria. Radisson Blue Hotels, why Nigeria? Nigeria is one of the largest economies in Africa. There's an opportunity for scale to grow in Nigeria for us. It's one of our focus countries in Africa, together with some other countries, but it's a key country for us. The other 2 are in Abidjan. Why Abidjan? The country is experiencing considerable growth in its tourism. There is enough investment flow to the market. The plateau in Abidjan is the new destination to be, and this is where our new hotels are going to be located. And the other 2 hotels will be in Guinea and Niger. Those were with existing partners or partners that we had more reactive, I would say, rather than proactive approach for these 2 countries. Otherwise, North Africa, 1 in Tunisia, in Tunis, and another 1 in Casablanca in Morocco. And then the last one in more or less the south of Africa in Zambia.
So in your opinion, I mean, as an industry player, what then do you think is actually the biggest bottleneck for big investors in the hotel industry like you? What are those things that you would want done right, that you feel are not being done right, to actually encourage or spark more investment in this sector?
It probably boils down to policy, probably, to infrastructure to some extent, and to people as well. Ability to find the right local people to get your project ongoing, the ability to find the right people to manage your project. Those are the three components that are critical, the challenges and the opportunities probably to get a hotel done.
And then maybe because of the theme that we are seeing in this Africa Hotel Investment Forum, there's a very important element, and that is on the conservation. And most of the time we've seen big investments like, you know, when you're putting up a big hotel, you have to do away with what was there before. And most of the time we've had environmentalists crying out loud and saying that, you know, we are actually depleting the environment, we're actually spoiling the environment. I want to hear what Radisson Blu specifically is actually doing in this end of conservation as far as investment is concerned.
I think it's critical when you open a hotel to make the hotel integrate in the habitat where it locates, and do not destroy the environment around it. That's a critical priority. A lot of countries are becoming increasingly conscious about it. If you look at the safari business in Kenya, for example, if you look at the safari business in Tanzania, for example, before you get any kind of license to operate a hotel, the government comes and makes sure that whatever you are building does not impact the environment around which the hotel is going to be built. And we strongly support that approach, and this is the best and the only way to approach such developments.
And so maybe let me take you back a bit before I let you go on a key element that we spoke about earlier on, and that was the challenge of getting the right people to actually manage your business. This is actually a very key challenge, of course, and not just for you and many other people, but I want to hear solutions. What do we do then? What sort of practical solutions would you be suggesting? The
best solution is to, for us and everybody in the industry, is to make sure that we have the right programs to train the local talent to run the hotels, to attract, to groom, and to retain the local talent. It's not always easy, but this is critical for us, for the communities, and for the societies where we operate. Every hotel that we open, for each room, we employ almost one person, and it's very important that that one person is from the society where the hotel is located. And it's our responsibility to create enough programs, training programs for these people so that they can find jobs, and for us to have them work.
Right. I like the fact that you say it's also part of your responsibility. Some people usually pass the ball over and say, you governments or you people in those areas, you need to actually do that.
No, I think it's a joint responsibility.
It's a joint
of course, it starts from education, and the educational program, the public sector or the governments will have to take the initiative on that. But once that is completed, it becomes our responsibility to do that as an industry.
Finally, the future for Africa as far as the hospitality industry is concerned, investment in this sector, because we've had a good picture being painted that actually the overall GDP of the world is actually not going to be growing as fast as that of just Africa on its own by 2019. And we're seeing more investors in the hotel industry, coming to invest in Africa because of the returns on investment. I want to read your thoughts as well on why you feel Africa is the future.
The opportunity is huge. The base is low. And if you look at how many people or visitors come to Africa today, compare them to one country like Spain, you will realize the magnitude of the opportunity. So the opportunity is massive. Africa is a huge continent. It's probably the last emerging continent in the world. But I want to touch on one point that you mentioned about the returns in 2019. This industry is not a short-term industry, it's a long-term industry. And Africa is not a short-term play, it's a long-term play. So when we look at Africa as industry stakeholders, whether investors or operators or employees for that matter, we have to look at it from a long-term perspective rather than a short-term perspective. If you look at it for 1 or 2 years, I don't think you will benefit, or you would achieve your objectives. You really have to look at it at the long term. In Africa, if you want to sail, you have to surf in the short term to sail in the long term.